This is Kindness Soul, and today I want to share with you a story that begins with a simple act of compassion on a quiet ranch in the American Southwest. It is a story of choices, of generosity, of heritage, and of the unexpected ways life pays back what we offer to others. It all began on a cold evening when a rancher named Thomas Brigg opened his door to someone he had never imagined would change his life forever. The sun had already dipped behind the mesas, painting the sky with strokes of orange and purple. Thomas had spent the whole day mending fences and checking the livestock. Dust clung to his boots, and exhaustion pulled at his shoulders. He had just sat down to his dinner, a simple bowl of stew, when he heard a soft but firm knock at the door. It was rare for anyone to come this far off the main road, especially at night. For a moment, he wondered if it was one of his ranch hands, or maybe a lost traveler. When he opened the door, he found a woman standing there. She was wrapped in a woven blanket, her long dark hair braided over her shoulder, her face serene yet clearly tired. She looked like she had been walking for hours under the harsh desert winds. She introduced herself with a calm voice. "My name is Ayanna," she said. "I am Apache. I am traveling and I need shelter for the night." Thomas hesitated, not because he feared her, but because it was unusual. Yet something in her eyes, something proud, gentle, and honest, made his decision for him. He stepped aside and welcomed her in. Ayanna thanked him quietly and stepped into the warm cabin. Thomas offered her a seat and some food. She accepted it with humility and ate slowly, as though savoring every bite. Thomas noticed the way she observed the room, almost as if she wasn't just looking at things but listening to them. She had a presence that felt ancient, as though she carried stories older than the ranch itself. After dinner, Thomas gave her a spare room. Before she went to sleep, she placed her hand over her heart and said, "Your kindness is seen. My people say that when a man gives without being asked twice, his spirit grows stronger." Thomas simply nodded, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to compliments, especially ones phrased like poetry. He slept deeply that night. But the next morning, the story took a turn he did not expect. When Thomas stepped outside to feed the animals, he froze. Standing near the barn were three more Apache women. They stood tall, proud, dressed in traditional clothing adorned with beads. They looked like they belonged to the same world Ayanna came from, a world far older than the dusty ranch. Before he could say a word, Ayanna stepped out of the house behind him. She smiled softly. "I told my sisters you helped me," she said. "They came to thank you and to ask something important." Thomas blinked, confused. He had expected Ayanna to leave quietly, not bring more guests. But he didn't feel anger, only curiosity. The eldest of the three women approached him. Her voice was calm but strong. "You gave shelter to our sister," she said. "We do not take such actions lightly. We have come to repay the kindness and to seek safety for one more night. If it is too much, we will leave. But we wanted to ask with respect." Thomas was a man who lived with an unspoken code. Helping someone in need was something he believed in, even when life had not always been kind to him. He remembered seasons when he had almost lost the ranch, when he had struggled alone and wished someone would offer him even a fraction of the help he now had the chance to give. So he nodded and said, "You can stay. All of you." The women bowed their heads gratefully. They moved gracefully, almost silently, as though their feet barely touched the ground. They settled outside near the barn where they preferred to sleep under the stars instead of inside the house. Throughout the day, Thomas watched them with growing fascination. The women carried themselves with dignity and seemed deeply connected to the land. They gathered herbs, whispered prayers to the wind, and sat in a circle weaving strands of grass into intricate shapes. Ayanna helped Thomas with chores without being asked. She moved efficiently, with surprising strength, and treated the animals with a kind of reverence. By midday, Thomas felt something shift inside him. For years, the ranch had been silent except for the sound of cattle and the wind. Now the air felt alive, filled with soft voices and quiet songs. Later that evening, as the sky grew dim, the eldest sister approached Thomas again. "We want to repay what you have given," she said. "But not with gifts or objects. Instead, with something more meaningful. Sit with us tonight." Thomas agreed, though he didn't quite understand what he was agreeing to. As darkness fell, the four women built a small fire behind the barn. The flames flickered in the night breeze, casting warm, golden light on their faces. They invited Thomas to sit with them. Ayanna sat beside him, her voice gentle as she explained. Our people believe that a man who opens his home without fear is a man who walks with a good heart. We want to share a story with you. A story passed down through generations. The eldest began speaking. Her words painted pictures in the air. She spoke of a time when kindness and courage were valued more than wealth. She told of warriors who protected their families not out of pride, but love. She spoke of the land, of its spirit and its memory. She explained how every act of kindness sent ripples through the world that returned someday, somehow. Thomas listened, captivated. It wasn't just a story, it felt like a lesson he didn't know he needed. When she finished, Ayanna added quietly, "You helped me without knowing who I was or what I carried. Many fear us, judge us, or turn us away. But you didn't. And because of that, your life will change." Thomas didn't know what she meant. But her words stayed with him. That night, the women slept near the barn while Thomas returned to his home. But he struggled to sleep. His mind replayed their stories, their songs, their calm confidence. He sensed their visit was not random. Something deeper was happening. Just before dawn, Thomas heard a knock at the door. When he opened it, he found Ayanna standing there alone. She looked peaceful. "We are leaving before the sun rises," she said. "But before we go, I want to tell you something important." Thomas stepped aside and she came in. "You showed kindness without expecting anything," she continued. "That is rare. My sisters and I see the storms inside you, the loneliness, the burdens you carry alone, the years of struggle. But the land has watched you. And now, it will bless you." Thomas didn't know what to say. "I didn't do anything special," he murmured. Ayanna shook her head softly. "You opened your door. Sometimes that is everything." She walked toward the window and looked out into the pale morning light. "If ever you need help, look to the eastern ridge. You will find us there." Before he could ask more, she turned and left. Thomas walked outside and saw the three women waiting. They raised their hands in silent farewell. Then, as quietly as they had arrived, they disappeared into the desert landscape. For a long moment, he stood there, feeling the absence of their presence like a sudden drop in temperature. But the story didn't end there. Over the next weeks, strange and wonderful things began happening on the ranch. His cattle, which had been weak, suddenly grew stronger. Rain came earlier than usual, nourishing the dry fields. A lost calf that had been missing for days returned unharmed. Even the air felt clearer, lighter. Thomas didn't tell anyone what had happened. Part of him wondered if people would think he imagined it. But deep down, he knew the truth. The women had brought something with them, something spiritual, something powerful, something connected to a world he had never fully understood. One evening, months later, Thomas was riding near the eastern ridge, checking fences, when he noticed smoke rising from a hidden valley. He followed the trail cautiously. As he got closer, he heard soft singing. When he reached the clearing, he stopped in awe. There, near a cluster of ancient rock formations, stood Ayanna and her sisters. They were surrounded by families, children, elders, an entire Apache community living quietly, peacefully. Ayanna approached him with a warm smile. "You found us," she said. Thomas dismounted and greeted her. "I wasn't sure if it was real," he admitted. "It is real," she replied. "Everything you felt is real." She guided him through the camp. People greeted him respectfully. Children watched with curious eyes. The elders nodded with recognition as though they had known him long before he arrived. Ayanna explained that their tribe had been traveling between lands, living simply, maintaining traditions that were fading in the modern world. They hoped to continue living in peace, close to the earth, away from noise and conflict. Thomas felt something stir inside him. He had always lived close to the land, but now he realized he had never truly listened to it the way they did. As the sun began to set, Ayanna joined him on a small hill overlooking the valley. "You are a friend of our people," she said softly. "You gave shelter to one of us without fear, and you welcomed the rest. That act lives in more hearts than you know." He looked at her, humbled. "I only did what I hope anyone would have done. But many wouldn't," she replied. They sat in silence, watching the sky turn shades of amber and deep red. Thomas felt a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. Finally, Ayanna spoke again. "Our lives are woven with threads of fate. When two paths cross at the right time, both lives change. Yours already has. And so has ours. Thomas returned home that night with a heart full of unspoken understanding. He had found something priceless, a connection to a culture rich in history, spirituality, and gratitude. The Apache women had entered his life unexpectedly, but their presence had awakened something he didn't know he had lost. Over time, Thomas continued to visit the valley. He brought supplies, helped with tools, shared food, and listened to stories. In return, the tribe taught him about herbs, wildlife, traditions, and respect for the spirit of the land. They showed him how the desert was not empty but alive with meaning. Word spread among neighboring ranchers of the sudden prosperity on Thomas's land, but he never bragged or claimed credit. He simply worked hard and remained grateful. His ranch flourished, not just because of rainfall or cattle but because of the peace that settled into his heart. The loneliness that once haunted him was replaced with a quiet strength. And every time he looked at the eastern ridge, he remembered Ayanna's first words, "Your kindness is seen." Years later, when Thomas was an older man, children from the Apache Valley would run to greet him. They called him Uncle Thomas, and the elders treated him like family. He had become a part of their story just as they had become part of his. A simple act of offering shelter had grown into a bond that tied two worlds together. This story reminds us all that kindness does not end with a single moment. It continues, expanding, reaching, transforming lives in ways we may never fully understand. When you open your door to someone in need, you might be opening a door to a miracle. This is Kindness Soul, and if this story touched your heart, remember that compassion, even in its smallest form, carries the power to change destinies. Thank you for listening, and may your kindness return to you in unexpected ways.